resilience, the ability to mentally and emotionally get through tough times. The worst part about resilience and the power of resilience is you have to have tough times to get better at tough time resilience. So I'm going to start with asking you a question. Now, normally, if we're in America, I'd ask you to stand up after every question. But I know we're in Europe. You don't like to clap, you don't like to scream, and you definitely don't like to stand up. So there will be no standing up. Simply ask yourself yes or no as I ask you the following questions. Number one, have any of you ever had heartbreak in your life? Have you ever been broken up with? Have you ever had to break up with somebody you cared about? Have you been through a divorce? Have you had a terrible split, acrimonious or not? Have you uncoupled, as Gwyneth Paltrow famously said about Chris Martin? Number two, have you or anyone you care about ever been sick? Heart attack, disease, immune problems, cardiac arrest, a multitude of diseases that affect every single person, you or anyone close. Yes or no? Have you or at any time lost anyone to anything? Accident, suicide, murder, God forbid. Have any of you lived through a pandemic? So I made sure that's everyone yes, right? There's no one that should say no, given those questions. And the truth is, hard times come for us all. No matter our position in life, no matter where we're from, no matter what suit we wear, what country we flew in on, adversity will affect every single one of us. And what we've heard from smarter people than me is that this is not the first pandemic, and I can promise you it won't be the last. I am from, those that haven't picked it up, Cape Town, South Africa, the other side of the world, even though I'm recently from London. I am considered a poor white, which is one of the smallest demographics in the whole of Southern Africa. In fact, according to a fact-checking website called Africa Checks, there are only 7,735 of us in the whole of Africa. I'm a minority of a minority. There is more chance of you meeting a Bushman in Africa, in Kenya, which is one of the destinations we've seen, than there is in speaking to me or anyone from where I grew up. I grew up in a place like this, where most people lived in caravans or mobile homes, where houses are made up from signs that we steal from the road. I was the first person in my family ever to get through high school. Ever. 100 and something years. My family was half Irish. The Irish, 5,000 of them, convicts, had come to Africa during the Irish famine. And the other half, surprisingly, English. No idea why they were there. Probably to make some money, I assume, but no one in my family did. I've gone on to do incredible things. I was the first person in history to start a podcast and sell a podcast. Start another podcast, sell another podcast. I've written 50 books, of which last year I sold 180,000, and the year before that I sold 250,000 through Amazon, which is probably why they have that statistic. I was the first person to use social media for events, where I took my small venue called Number One Leicester Square from 0 to 1 million in 5 months. I was voted not once but twice most influential person in the world in events because they got my name wrong once and my name right once. So once I was in for Jason on Scott and once I was in for Lord Jason Scott. Now it all sounds pretty impressive, but bear in mind two things. In Europe, I am a man and I am white, so that did help outside of Africa. Kidnapped at 5 years old. Someone thought I was wealthy because I was white, pulled me outside of my school, stuck me in a van, drove me out, stuck me in a toilet for 6 weeks where they tried to get money out of me, or at least out of my family. Petrifying. To this day, I can feel myself shake when I think about it. Horrific. That said, I don't get bored anymore because I'm used to spending time by myself. Very rarely get scared. But when I was 12, I was in an attempted homicide back in my wonderful motherland of Africa, where I was shot. And if you're lucky, I'll show you a hole through my chest and out the back. I have the words Carpe Diem tattooed on my forearm as a reminder to seize the moment and seize the day, because I don't know how many more of these I have. That's actually untrue. I have 16,371, according to my neurologist. All of this was pretty scary, but at 38, I went blind. Completely and utterly blind for 3 days. wasn't scared, wasn't nervous. I kept thinking it'll come back. It has to come back. No one lives through all of this and then just goes blind. I mean, if I did, I never had a chance of a singing career. Stevie Wonder is better than me. I would never make a film about me. Jamie Foxx did that with Sugar or Ray. But I thought something good must come out of it. Went to a neurologist. They tested my eye, they tested my brain, and they found out I had lots of scars on my brain and down my spine. Scars, when open up, lose a signal that's passed from the brain to the body that tells it what to do. The signal kind of flies out, like when you put a hole in a cable. Well, multiple scars, scar, Latin, sclerosis for the doctor in the room. Multiple scars, multiple sclerosis. I was told I had this autoimmune disease that would take away 10 years of my life. Now, growing up poor, white, shot, kidnapped, and stabbed, I'd already been told I lost 20 years of my life. So 30 years of my life were taken off right there and then. The doctor, thinking that she had done a great job, and in all fairness to her, she did her best, handed me a leaflet with the 5 stages of grief. She said, this is what you're going to go through. Try not to make any stupid moves for at least 5 years. In that 5 years, I got married and divorced. I did not listen to the pamphlet. It said anger, bargaining, denial, depression, and sometimes anger again before acceptance was what I was going to go through. All of them true. But here's the thing. That didn't make me feel like an active participant in my life. A life that we only have one of, no matter your spiritual leanings, unless, of course, you believe in reincarnation. Maybe I get to come back, and none of this gets to happen to me. I needed to take control. Now, I mentioned I had a podcast. I had 2 podcasts, 3 podcasts. So I started interviewing people, pretending it was for a podcast. I interviewed great leaders, C-suite directors. I got the opportunity to go to the G8. I got the opportunity to interview political leaders. I spoke to Tony Blair. Because I had got this podcast, which did very well, I got invited to number 10 Downing Street, which is like the White House, but harder to get into. I got to speak to the Prime Minister at a very scary time. Theresa May, a very scary person. And I said, how do you deal with all that's happening, all this adversity? At the time we had Brexit, we didn't even have the C word. I mean, she was just dealing with that, and that she wasn't very popular. She said a couple of things. And the funny thing is, when I went through my research, it seemed the same 3 things kept coming up again and again and again and again. And it's the 3 things I'm going to share with you now that leaving this room, every single person can use, no matter what the future looks like. Number 1, resilient people understand the basic concept, forgive my French, shit happens. I lived for Thailand for 2.5 years. I started a swimming school. It's called Bangkok Swimming School. It is to this day the biggest swimming school in Southeast Asia. The whole plan was to help one Asian child not drown during the monsoon. We ended up doing 128,000 before I left beautiful Southeast Asia, the land of smiles, Sawadee Cup, Sabai Mai, to anyone that's Thai. And the funny thing is that most Buddhists understand this idea that shit just happens. Why wouldn't it happen to me? The second is resilient people, no matter who they are really good at something called meaning making, which I'll talk about in a second. And lastly, a question they ask themselves every single time before they make a move. Is what I'm doing helping or harming me? In the land of the blind, a one-eyed man is king. This concept simply means that when everyone else is ignorant, just having one idea is better than having no idea. I had the great opportunity to speak to a Navy SEAL, and he was on their way to Afghanistan, or on the way back from Afghanistan, or on the way back from Afghanistan to go to Afghanistan. It's very hard to work out with the Americans. And I said, what do you do? How do you know what you're doing is right, or when it's right? And he said, we don't. But just making a decision and sticking to it is like having one eye open when everyone else is blind. And I thought that was very, very true, especially as we know in our industry, having some sort of plan, when to go to coffee, when to come back, when to have an awards, when not, is far better than kind of working it out on the seat of our pants. If you select your attention, your focus, this idea that if we just focus on one thing, we have the opportunity to make moves in this one thing. I mentioned all these great things I've done, and I've been incredibly lucky, but I've also been unlucky. I've got no kids, I've got no family. I don't have much to focus on, in fairness, except stuff. Always wanted to write a book. I wrote a book, wrote a couple of books, written just over 50 books in 6 years. I've got nothing else to do, in all honesty. I wanted to speak on stage, I've spoken at over 200. I focused, but I've also just wanted to live a good life. I wanted to do 3 things before I get taken from this planet: to live, to love, to matter. That's it. I ask myself every single day, today, did you live? Did you love? Did you matter? When it comes to problem solving, it's fixing one thing. It's putting your attention to one thing. In the case of this right now, this one thing, hopefully, is the belief that you can learn. You can learn a skill of resilience. You can learn what to focus on in bad times. In psychology, we call this meaning making. We go, the weather is shite, but I get to wear my favorite raincoat. The weather is beautiful. I could get skin cancer, but I also could get a great tan. Meaning making. I'm going to keep doing this every couple of seconds. The third thing that everyone seems to have going for them is this idea of gratitude. In fact, Harvard did a test. They took a group of people, 27 people, and for 6 months they asked them every single day to say what they were thankful for, every morning and every night. At the end of that 6 months, not a single person in that group was depressed, angry, had anxiousness, anxiety, or any fear about the upcoming exams. The rest of the class was incredibly scared about the exams. These exams were going to determine whether they would move out into the world, whether they would start tech companies, get to do incredible things. The only difference was the idea of this. The idea that every single day, they simply took the time to say thank you. Thank you, wonderful team, for setting this up. Thank you, everyone, from traveling here all over the world. Thankful for the breath I take. Thankful for the memory I have at this moment. And that's another key thing I took from all these global leaders. This moment. We take a lot of pain from the past and we talk about it and we spend so much of our time focused on it, when in this moment it doesn't exist. Seneca, one of the greatest leaders of our time, said, "We take more bows and arrows slinged to us in our imaginations than the present will ever bring." I think that's incredibly true. But I'll tell you a little secret, if you will. When we were cave people, we would come out of the cave and we'd see a saber-toothed tiger and a beautiful rainbow. And the brain said, "Notice the tiger." And that's great, because you can't be looking at a rainbow when a tiger comes at you and kills your entire cave. The problem is we're no longer in a cave. And that part of the brain, the amygdala, doctor can find me afterwards and correct my Latin, tells us that everything is a tiger. Every tweet, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, news headline, the world is coming to an end, people aren't going out. All this attention, all this negative bias, one of the 27 biases that our brain constantly feeds off. Well, that's attention. When instead, we could be focusing on all the things that are going right. Thanks to this horrible situation, carbon emissions went down. Thanks to this horrible situation, people are thinking intrinsic and extrinsic, spiritual and physical, as we've heard today. People are thinking about what we can do for a better world. People are working on better medicine, quicker response. We heard snap decisions, something which is popular here. I mentioned helping or harming. Is what I'm doing based out of fear or love? Am I putting on a great event because I'm so scared people will leave and say it was terrible? Or am I putting on a great event because I love what I do? I love creating moments. I love creating memories. Am I scared to go out to this event because I'm worried about catching this thing that's out there, that's constantly evolving, and it will keep evolving? We know this from scientists. Or do I love being alive, and I want to experience the carpe diem that is here right now in the time that I have? 86,400 seconds a day. We get it every day until we don't. Like any muscle, it only grows when we put pressure on it. It only grows when we force it to adapt. We can't get muscle by lying in our beds. Although there has been some proof, if you think about it over and over and over again, there's incremental change. But we need hard times. And here's the great news. Hard times are going to come. And they're going to come, and they're going to come. But hard times come to pass. They don't come to stay. In my lifetime, I have seen 2 pandemics. I was in the 80s, we had AIDS. And in Africa, we even covered our apples and fruits with condoms. We were that scared. Now, of course, we got this. I've also been lucky enough to survive apartheid. I survived the riots. I survived 3 bombings in Africa, 2 bombings in the States, 1 bombing in Thailand, and a tsunami. Still here. Still have the opportunity to share what I've learned and meet incredible people like yourselves. Thank you for your time and attention. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope you've learned at least 3 things on what you can do every single day in every single way. Thank you very much.